In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most powerful ideas in personal finance and in life. How the choices we make with money are not just about math. They're about freedom, independence, and ultimately purpose.
Because money by itself is never really the end goal.
Money's just a tool. Independence is the goal, and purpose is what gives that independence meaning.
So in this episode, we're talking about how to think about money decisions in a way that goes way beyond budgets, returns, and spreadsheets.
And gets to the deeper question. What kind of life are you actually trying to build?
And maybe, even more importantly, what kind of life are you trying to avoid regretting?
If you've ever felt stuck between being responsible and actually living for today, if you've ever wondered whether you're building wealth or just building a cage with nicer furniture,
then this episode is for you. This is The Fi Guys. Let's get into it.
welcome to the episode. Dominic, I'm glad to be here today. We're going to be talking about something that I think is really, really important. And that's that maybe the goal of life shouldn't be to maximize everything, but the real goal should be just to minimize your future regrets. And maybe that's the only money rule that actually matters.
Absolutely. I know we all live with a ton of regret. And it's funny because it seems like a lot of the episodes recently, or at least in the last maybe 5 weeks or so, have been themed around us, right? We're drawing from our natural pool of ideas, right? So I'm wondering, was there an event in your life recently where you felt a little bit of money regret or some kind of feeling in that direction that really brought this podcast to fruition?
Yeah, actually, this was an idea that I had just about a week ago. And we're going to get into like a little bit of philosophy just straight off the bat, right? When it comes to this, and that the best way, and I used to tell people this when I was making true financial plans, like if I knew the day that you were going to die, we could make the best financial plan. Like if I had the date, the time, like you could tell me this day, we know. Because in truth, most people say like life is short, and it can be, and life is long. I once met a guy and we were leaving. He said, "Hey man, keep in touch. Life is long." And I've never heard someone say that. I've always heard people say the exact opposite, like life is short. So stay in touch. Without us knowing when we're going to be able to pass, life is both short and life is both long. So I've been kind of in my head thinking about this like dilemma of the best way to minimize future regrets is to both live as if you're going to die tomorrow and as if you're going to live forever. And there's that balance, right? Where there's no right answer. And the reason this is so poignant for me is at the time of recording, it's been a decade since I lost one of my best friends. He's passed, he's no longer with us. And that's what really brought this to the forefront of my mind, because he passed away in his 20s. So for him, life was short. And I look back on those moments of with both fond admiration and regret for not spending more time, because those are things you can't get back. So how do you live in accordance with both of those things with this dynamic tension? So that's the reason that I'm bringing this up, is how do you minimize those future regrets? Because there are things you can never take back. And everyone has different thought processes or different risk tolerances or different desires that's going to change the calculus, where most people come to money advice saying what's the one answer that's going to be right for everybody? When you really don't know, because what are you going to regret in the future is going to be dependent on not only the individual, but also the time that they're in. And I'll give you an example of that. Like say you have a kid, or maybe one of our listener right now, they have children, and they decide, and they know, or if they found out, or, they decide, I'm going to scrimp and I'm going to save. And if I pass away tomorrow, at least I know that my kids are going to be taken care for. No regrets. But then that same person in 30, 40 years, their kids are out of the house, and now they look back with regrets saying man, I wish we spent more money making memories, because I know that the kids made it through and now they're on their own. And now that is the same person, but in different space and time, essentially makes them a different person. So how are you going to be able to go through life on this knife's edge, knowing that we don't know when we're going to die? So how are we going to be able to balance living for today and living for tomorrow? And that is where this idea of minimizing future regrets comes into play.
Wow. That's That's very impactful, and I'm sorry for your friend and for you. And I am curious, because something like that is obviously it's not normal. We all expect to hopefully live into our 80s, 90s. I hope to live to 100. Some people online even further, right? But I am curious. I mean, we are talking about regret today, mostly financial, philosophical, and whatnot. But for someone in their 20s, like your friend, how did that? What changed for you after that? Because that's a very usually people don't deal with a lot of death at such a young age, while your mind is still developing, and obviously, that's left a deep impact on you 10 years later. I mean, obviously, you're still thinking of your friend, but how has that kinda shaped your life and really changed every aspect of it?
Yeah. Death for me in my life, not to make it like sound morbid, has been like a pretty constant reminder. Like I grew up in a military family. There were people that I would meet from my dad's friends or my mom's friends who, you know, they're went off and now they're no longer here. So that was something that I kind of figured out younger. But those were always other people. They like you understood like, oh yeah, they're in the military. They're going off to war. This is a risk. But when you lose a friend who's in their 20s, who's healthy and things like that, that's when life changes. You're like, oh wow, like the calculus has just changed because this wasn't someone in their 80s or 90s. Or like, yeah, this makes sense. This is, and this is something that it could come for any of us at all time. So in the statement, life is short and life is long simultaneously, because it could be either any day. Like, I mean, there could be a gas leak right now that I don't know. I could have an aneurysm right now and not know. Like, you just don't know. And that's the difficulty. I think a lot of people, if you could tell them, like, hey, I can tell you exactly what day you're going to die, most people wouldn't want that information. And I don't blame them. It would take all the mystery out of life. It would take probably a lot. It would help you a lot in many ways, and it would hinder you in many ways. So we get to live with that. It's like Schrodinger's cat, right? It's both alive and dead until we find out, until you look. So this is the parallel of life. We don't know. And that's what makes it fun, exciting, and doesn't give it a right answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I know sometimes I often ask questions looking for solid answer, but really sometimes, like you said, it's just sometimes there isn't a solid answer. I can relate to that as well, actually. Growing up in a police family, and we'll get back to finance here in a minute, right? We'll pick up the energy, I swear. But it seemed like, I mean, every month, every couple months, we were going to a funeral or something like that. And I don't know if you ever felt this about your father. I don't know if he was ever in like active or
Hmm.
just you know. Um, you always fear like the call. It's like, oh, hey, guess what? Here's the news you've been fearing all your life. Um, That definitely weighs on a person. And I know speaking from my own experience, to me, it's like death is Tony Stark said it the best. It's like part of the journey is the end. And I always loved that. Part of the journey is the end. And hopefully, whatever you guys got squared away with your spiritual side, it's locked in, but these are the kinds of regrets that we're trying to avoid, but sometimes regret is imminent, right? Sometimes we can't avoid regret, right, Chris? And I think that's maybe one of the better frames to put this episode in is while we're trying to steer everyone away from regret's most likely is still going to happen, right, Chris?
Yeah. And then that's the reason that I titled this Minimize Future Regret.
Yeah.
I'd never want to say eliminate regret because that's an impossibility. But what can we do to try to minimize it? And like, this is the difficulty, right? So when I think of Jeff Bezos in this moment, like right now, it's when an interviewer asked Jeff Bezos, hey, why did you create Amazon? Like, how did you have the courage? And he said, I did an exercise where I projected myself to 80 years old. And I asked myself, would I regret trying my hardest in this thing called the internet? And if it worked out, great. Like, I wouldn't regret that. And if it didn't work out, great. I would regret not trying. But for me, and this is where things are different, if I put in all of my time, all of my energy, all of these things and failed, Well, I might regret that. And maybe there's a lot of people that might regret that, putting in all this time and energy. But for Jeff Bezos in that moment, he said, no, I wouldn't regret it even if I failed. And that's what the calculus for him. So we all need to be able to come to this in our own time. And to your other point, when it comes to like the call, that if someone knocks on my door and doesn't ring the doorbell, like 2 knocks still freaks me the hell out. If
Fair.
I wake up and there are multiple phone calls on my phone, because that's how when my friend passed away, I woke up to like 6 calls, I
Yeah.
still freak out. Like those are still triggers for me to this day, and they will probably never go away.
I don't know if you're also like this with, like when your parents call. I try and answer every call I can because I'm always afraid that it's like, "Hey, I just got in something nasty. This is the
Hmm.
last call." And I always have to pick it up. I try my best to always pick it up. Um, I don't know. It's funny to me though, because at least in my experience, but when you call your parents, like, I can't get where are you at? The Andes Mountains? I can't get a hold of you. What the hell, man? Um, but yeah, parents are funny. Parents are funny, but
And that's part of it, right? Like that's part of minimizing future regrets is like, I'm going to try to answer the call as much as I can in order to minimize future regrets. Majority of the time, heck, I hope all the time. You never have that moment. You're like, oh God, thank God I picked up that call. But you make this calculus of like, is it worth it to me right now? And luckily, that's a simple decision. Do I pick up the phone? So let's get back to finance if you don't mind.
please.
I want to first off start with the problem with most money advice. When you go online, when you talk to a financial advisor, when you talk to anybody, most money advice is built around optimization. How do I maximize my returns? How do I minimize my taxes? How do I become most efficient with the use of every single dollar? But people, they don't live on a spreadsheet. Life is emotional, life is personal, and most people, they don't regret bad math nearly as much as they regret things that are far more important to their life, like wasting their time, missing experiences, not acting when they had the chance to do something, or building a life that didn't feel like their own. I can't remember who the author was. I think it was Emerson. At the time of his death, the last word he said was so much wasted time. And I think about that today in how many people are distracted by social media. So much people are distracted by, like, let me be anywhere but inside of my brain. Let me be anywhere but present right now. How much wasted time. And it's not till you come up to these moments of death or you come to these moments of finality that you're like, oh wow, like I wasted so much time. And the times that I just swept under the rug, I thought were nothing or not important, I would give anything for 5 more minutes.
Yeah, it's I said the energy was gonna pick up. I swear it'll pick up eventually. It'll definitely pick up. But there was a book that you recommended to the people. I think it'd be valuable to recommend it maybe a second time. It was
The five
uh,
regrets of the dying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got that on Audible. Um,
Get that on Audible, son.
um, no, but yeah, it is important. It's important. But how do we make those decisions to you know push our limits and really live a life without regret?
Yeah. It's going to be difficult, right? Like, and that's the balance. That's what we're going to talk about here. For just from a money standpoint, I think we need to first realize that the best decision is not always the one that looks mathematically the best. Because I know for finances, we think like, oh, it's just math. Like math is math. It's easy to do, or not easy, but like there's a right answer, right? But sometimes there's a better question that you need to ask yourself because people aren't judged by the quality of their, or I don't judge people based off the quality of their answers, but by the quality of their questions. Is what choice will I be able to make that will give me the least likelihood for regret later to minimize my future regret? And that's the way that we try to live in accordance. How am I going to be able to do these things? Does that answer the question?
Could you go a little bit deeper?
Yeah. I think right now you're looking for an answer
Yeah.
for, how can I minimize future regret? Or how can I not have regret? There is no answer. The only answer is the question. What to me will I be able to eliminate? Like how? What choice can I make today that will least likely give me regret later?
Yeah, it sounds like some of the hardest questions in life aren't answered by other people. They can only be answered by you. And my answer is different from your answer, and the listeners is different for them as well. I think that's what makes it so difficult, right? Because there's no formula. It's not like, okay, every third thing that comes up, do that. Yeah, like, do that. That's the formula. It's like, no, I wish. Um, but maybe it's more of like knowing yourself, obviously, and building that muscle of trust and having that vision. Similar to like Jeff Bezos, like they were asking Jeff Bezos, looking back, it's like, would you regret doing this? Um, and would you be okay if things went really bad? Because that's the thing is like we don't know. We don't know. It's like a lot of people, it's like, man, I want to start that business. I want to do this. I want to run that. I want to XYZ. And they get stuck in the fear aspect. But it's so tough. It's really there's not really an easy way to get past it, is there, Chris? I mean, I find it so interesting that some people are, and I don't know why. I'm sure there's a deep psychological answer for it, but I'm not going to ask the question just yet. But I think it's so interesting that some people live a life more carefree and free, and they don't live a life of regret, while others stay shackled to their safety and they, and their boat at the dock, and they never leave the harbor to go explore and find themselves more. And I think life is about exploration, not necessarily in real life, but internally as well. And I hope this episode inspires all of us to kind of look inward more and say, like, well, what are we holding back on that we've been wanting to do for a while? Because, like you said, life's kind of long, kind of short. We don't know.
You know, I think a lot about like Taoism in these moments where there's like what is in accordance with nature, like evolution or whatever you God or whatever you want to say is the reason like is incredibly intelligent in the amount of resources that it puts towards your living. Yet human beings, us in our mind, we are terrible at being able to like decide like am I going to live long or live short? Like we're not good at it. But nature is really good at it. So I'm going to introduce to you two friends. Number one is the feeble guppy. A guppy, the little fish, are predators or they are prey of like every animal in the sea and birds and crabs. Like they just like they're so nature has basically put all of the resources of the guppy towards reproduction. Like they're basically trying to have kids immediately. So when they come out, there is nothing like their body is not trying to optimize longevity. Their body is trying to optimize having babies. So a guppy usually only lives, if it lives a long life, 1 to 2 years. And by that point, there are like great, great, great grandmothers or great, great, great grandfathers because nature has put into them, like, you are not going to live long in this world because you are prey to everything. Therefore, we're going to optimize around reproduction, around growth. Now I want to introduce you to another friend. This is the Icelandic shark. In Iceland, there is this shark that's very slow, very methodical. They are the dictator of their world. They have zero natural predators. They don't reach sexual maturity till, and I'm not relying on this one, I believe it's 120 years old. So think of the feeble guppy, prey to everything. They reach a sexual maturity in like days from being born because like you got to get working on this because you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Versus the Icelandic shark, 120 years before they can start to reproduce. And we don't know how long they live. It's estimated between 500 and 600 years. But we have not known about them for long enough to actually know that. And no one has been around long enough to be able to really know. So nature, so what is in that 120 years that the Icelandic shark is being developed, they are basically impervious to cancer. All of the resources are going into making the perfect body for this animal because they don't have anything. And they can live basically forever. So when I think about it, it's basically the YOLO crowd versus the people that are super hard financial independence, retire early. Do I just YOLO this and just say like I'm gonna do whatever I want and
I'm gonna
it's about
reproduce like
making money
crazy
right
and
now. Yeah, I'm just gonna send it, son. Like you only live once. I'm just gonna spend all of it and hope that I die young. And then there's the opposite. There's the Icelandic shark who is everything's compound interest, everything is waiting, everything is this. And us as human beings, we're not the guppy, and or maybe and we're also not the Icelandic shark. And in many ways, we are the guppy and we are the Icelandic shark. But you don't know which one you're at. And nature has put into us as the top prey animal or top predator in the world to have this confusion. So like I think about it as like maybe it's biology, maybe it's psychology, that there are some people that like have that in them and don't. And it's probably a lot of learned behavior.
that's a great analogy. It's a very interesting analogy. I didn't know they're just in Iceland, right? I'm not gonna find them in beaches of California, hopefully.
No, they
Doesn't
like
come up
cold
again.
water. You'll be okay.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. I hate to be swimming and 600-year-old shark comes up and like, I got the wisdom on you, son. It's like, ah, man. Yeah, that's interesting though. So what are some things that we can learn from that besides what you've already kind of taught? Anything in there that you're maybe think is like too advanced for us, or any like
No, no.
hidden gems?
The purpose that the reason I bring that up is that we as human beings are terrible at being able to tell like which side of the fence are we on?
Yeah.
Should we live for today like the guppy, or should we invest in the future like the Icelandic shark? And the answer is neither. Is neither do one or the other. It's do both, because you are both the guppy and the Icelandic shark. Like you need to be able to live for today and take care of tomorrow. And that's where this individuality comes in and minimizing future regrets. Because I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to money, they don't realize that you don't feel your returns. You don't feel the math, but you do feel your regrets. You do feel the things you didn't do. And I think this is what makes the conversation so important is people spend years, decades, their entire lives trying to optimize the money decisions. But emotionally, what stays with us is not usually the percentage returns that we got. Like emotionally, you might be like, oh yeah, I got these great returns, but like it's not like I got 12% for returns this past year, therefore I am great forever. The things that stay with us are these regrets. And those regrets are the trips you never took, the businesses you were too afraid to start, the conversations that you never had, the years you spent chasing security at the cost of meaning. And that's something that's pointing to me in like my life. That's the reason I want to bring it up is that sometimes like you don't want to look back at the end of your life saying like, oh, I have all this money and I like built up all this security, but I forgot to live along the way. And that's the idea of like when you look at these two extremes, right? The YOLO crowd versus the hard financial independence, retire early. The hard YOLO crowd, yeah, they're going to have regrets if they live long, but the financial independence guys are going to have regrets at the end of their life saying like, I've amassed all of this fortune, but I never actually lived my life. So more money doesn't automatically mean fewer regrets. Sometimes people make all the quote unquote right decisions and still feel empty inside. And that's the hardest part. You don't feel your returns the same way that you feel your regrets. Regret is emotional, regret is personal, regret stays with you for your entire life.
Is there a way to, once a regret is taken hold, is there a technique that you have that helps you deal with that a little bit better?
If I answer that question, we're going to get into like a really Buddhist question. Like we'll go down we'll go
Okay.
down a rabbit hole.
Okay.
Um, but I think the biggest thing is you don't have to identify with that thought. Or maybe an easier way to put it for those who like don't want to go into the Buddhist rabbit hole is learn from it. Learn from it. Like that's all we can do in life. You are never going to eliminate regret. You're never going to eliminate all these things, but we can learn and try to grow. I have so many regrets in life, so many. And all I can do is because I don't have access to the past to fix those. I think too many people, that's what rumination is. That's what depression is sitting in that time and being like, I wish I did something differently. And like, I wish I did, but you don't have access to that. You only have access to right now. You don't even have access to the future. You have access to right now. So take those learnings and say, I'm not going to do it again, or I'm going to try my best to not do it again, live in accordance with my values in order to grow, get better. You can't eliminate regret, but you can choose to be a different person because of it.
While you were speaking, it kind of had the thought where you're like, like think about it and just process it, or don't identify. If it doesn't serve you, don't identify it. But what I was thinking was like, don't. I'm rereading this book by David Goggins, um, and I'll tie this back in a second. But in the book, his father is like his tormentor, essentially, and him and his mother and his brother, they all saw different versions of the tormentor, essentially. And the brother, he's like, no, he rationalized it, made excuses for him, and so he oftentimes goes back to Buffalo, New York, where they were tormented, to like show the kids around the old skating rink and like all the places, right? And Goggins was saying that his mother should have gone back and like wrote a letter and burnt it and like released it and just been gone with those memories, right? And he was saying that don't let anything go to waste, essentially. And what I'm getting at here is, you know, with regret, don't let the lessons of the regret go to waste. Whether that's writing down in your memoirs or in your journal and or teaching the next generation. It's like, hey, this was my experience. This might not be your experience going forward if you see this happen in your life, but this was my experience. And I want you to take something for this so that my pain isn't worthless. And I think that's one of the things that kind of, for me at least, it sticks out initially is educating more people on this road. Like if we're we just dropped in on a new land, and you know Chris is like, I'm gonna go to the left, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to the right, and I go to the right, and there's like it's just spiky rocks, and my feet are getting destroyed, and I come back, and you're like, hey, I want to go to the right today. It's like, good for it. Go for it, Chris. It's like, well, aren't I a prick? It's like, no, you should come back and teach people and really don't be so shy. Don't be so shy. I think the best lives are lives lived boldly and full of mistakes. And the more mistakes, the better. I
Yeah.
think it'd be a sad tragedy to live a life with no mistakes and no regrets in a
Yeah.
weird way.
I think of two famous people in history, and one is Winston Churchill, who once said, never let a good tragedy go to waste. And that could be the lesson that you learned. And then I also think of Viktor Frankl and The Man's Search for Meaning, and that in our suffering, the meaning that he took from it is like, I get to teach people about these things. And like, that's what gave the suffering meaning. And that's something I've been thinking about actually a lot recently is like, without suffering, there is no meaning. And that also means without meaning, there is no suffering. So you need to be able to deal with both of those things. In order to have suffering, you must have a greater meaning. In order to have meaning, you must suffer. And that's just maybe part of the life. So I want to talk about the three most common types of regrets. And I don't even know if there are other regrets outside of these, but I'm just going to keep it open in case there are. And I'm going to break this down into both like life and finances. But the first type of regret that people feel is time regret. And that's, I wish I started sooner. If you're investing, it's, I wish I invested earlier. I wish I had taken action sooner. And that's where like, that a lot of people are stuck in like that time regret is I wish I had done this. I wish I'd done that at an earlier time. The next one is experience regret. I wish I'd taken that trip. I should have enjoyed that season of life more. I should have spent money when it actually mattered to me when I was in that moment because I can't get back there. So that's kind of a mix of both the time and the experience regret, right? I think the final one is the identity regret. I became someone I never wanted to be because other people told me to. I built a life around fear. I made decisions that may have looked safe at the time, but were out of alignment with who I really am. So again, when we're trying to minimize these future regrets, time regret, experience regret, identity regret, we need to be able to simultaneously remember that life is long and life is short. And like, how am I going to in the future, even if I died tomorrow or died in 100 or a million years, how would I have done these things? Regret is not always about money itself. A lot of the times it's about who you became through every decision that you made. Because every little choice you make is a vote in the person that you're going to become. And too many people, especially when it comes to money, are willing to make the right mathematical choices. Some people are, some people aren't. But in general, like the people that are going to listen to this podcast are willing to make the right mathematical decisions. But with that, they're going to lose the time. They're going to lose the experience. They're going to lose the identity. And those are all going to be regrets in the future. So that's where like this comes in. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There might be a wrong answer, but there's definitely no right answer, in that you have to decide for yourself, how am I going to live in this? How am I going to minimize my future regrets to the best of my ability without knowing the future? Because none of us are God. None of us are, like, no one knows that.
I wonder what was what was kind of the greatest teacher to teach you about getting past the regrets and learning from it. And, I know you see it a lot in your job and helping clients and whatnot with their finances. And a lot of people live for the moment, a lot of people don't. Um, but what has been like your great teacher in getting past the regrets and realizing that this could be a regret? Because I feel like a lot of people don't realize sometimes when they're at the crossroads of destiny. It's if I go left, I won't be able to go right down the line. And how do you kind of identify that? Is there like a trick to identify that, or is it just like just really thinking deeply on every decision?
Like my greatest teachers are philosophers. But I think my greatest teacher in general is death. Like, so if you reflect on that and you really think, like, if I died tomorrow, will I regret it? I think a lot of people, like, if you found out, Dominic, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to kill you in like 10 hours. Like, or like if I tell you that, and then it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to make a decision. Like, I can really doubt that you're going to be regretting that decision you made when you were 5 years old and you like asked that girl out and she laughed at you. Like, the regrets, I mean, that's maybe not that someone's going to murder you, but like, you're going to have a brain aneurysm. Like fortune teller tells you you're going to have a brain aneurysm like tonight at midnight. Like,
No, I like you coming to my house and killing me way better than a brain. It was so much more funny.
yeah.
So much more funny. Just kick in the door, armbar time. It's like, no, man, I have to break all my legs first and arms first.
But
Okay.
in those moments, you're going to realize what's the most important things to you. And
Yeah.
I think this is the most important part, right? Is like, we as human beings, we need a shift from optimization to alignment. Because I think too many of us were stuck in like, how do I optimize my life, when maybe the real question should be like, how do I align with the person that I want to be, with the person that I actually already am? Because a lot of people ask, like, what's the smartest move, Chris? What's the best return? What's the most efficient choice that I can make? But a much more human question, a much more complex question is, what choice aligns with the life that I actually want? And what life could I be happy with, regardless if it's short or if it's long? And this is where money becomes extremely personal, because personal finance is far more personal than it is finance. This is where your values matter. This is where clarity matters. And this is the reason that I focus so much on this stuff when it comes to the podcast, because there is no right answers, right? There
Mhm.
are just answers, and they're going to be different dependent on the person. Like, and this is where things get difficult, right? Like, this is the balance. This is where it always is. Like, do I save aggressively or do I enjoy the present? And most people will say, yeah, it's an or, but it, and it's an and. Like, you do both. Do I stay with this stable job or do I pursue a meaningful work? Do I hoard money out of fear or do I use money to support the life that I want right now? Do I take calculated risks or do I stay stuck where I am forever? I don't know. Only you know the answer to that. So how do you know that you want to live rather than what's the most efficient way to live? What's the best way? What's the way that you are going to be able to say, like, I don't regret doing these things? Because the right decision is often the one that your future self can live with. It doesn't necessarily need to be the one that looks perfect to everyone else. Because the only thing that matters when you put your head on that pillow is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. So how are you going to answer that question? And a lot of it's going to be by seeking counsel, understanding, but most importantly, like understanding yourself.
I loved what you said there about alignment over optimization. That hit home for me personally, for sure, and I think that'll definitely connect with a lot of people that are listening. Um, because oftentimes, yeah, it's like, how can we make this just the most efficient thing ever? But it completely takes out the human aspect and doesn't always align with who you are. Like if I optimize my editing schedule, like, okay, I'm only gonna optimize my editing schedule. It's like, well, what about what about my family? What about my job outside, right? It's like everything thrown out the window. What about the projects and the all these different things? And I think it's a lot easier said than done, but I think it's a lot easier than we think it is. And I don't think it's something that's impossible. But what I am curious about is, I guess it all goes back to knowing yourself and
It's
having a
annoying, right?
vision.
That's always the answer. Like, it's so
Yeah.
annoying.
Sure. Rename the podcast, that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it really does go back to that age old statement, because if you don't know yourself, well, then what will you know to align with? What do you choose to align with for your life, and what direction do you want to take yourself in? And these are some of the bigger questions of the episode, I guess, of life as well. And I wish we had the answers for them, but we don't. We
I
can't.
wish I did. Yeah, I wish we do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I guess I recently reread the Bhagavad Gita. It's the
Yeah.
Indian, like, it's one of the Indian, like,
Religious
sects
text. Yeah.
for Hinduism.
Yeah.
And in it, your narrator, they like meet God. It's not Shiva, but it's like their version of like the highest God, right? And he asks, like, "What are you?" And the response is, "I am." And then it, you have to kind of go and like think like, what is "I am" mean? And then it asks, "Well, what am I?" And then it goes, "You are." And I kind of think about that, and like, just to get like really philosophical for a second, is like when you think about those questions, like, "I am," like, what am I? It is everything. And then when they ask the question, like, so then what am I as the individual? It's you are. You are part of it. So maybe that's like the answer, is that like the reason that you need to know yourself is because by understanding yourself, you can also understand everything else.
It's so interesting. It's like it's like attacking the hardest question possible so that all the other questions are easier. But if you don't attack the hardest question possible, all the easier questions are impossible to ask or to answer. And that's so frustrating, because you could take a lifetime to ask that main question
Yeah, and never get there.
and never
So
get there.
I would like to give our audience, to bring it back down to like ground level, some practical questions that people can ask themselves in order to maybe eliminate or help to minimize, can't eliminate, but maybe to help minimize some of these regrets. And let's go ahead and do it from from major money decisions, because we are the Fi Guys podcast. And I know we talk about philosophy. Maybe we should retitle the podcast to the Fi with PH and with the FI guys, maybe one day.
Yep.
But before we make many major money decisions, I want people to be able to ask themselves these questions, because again, oftentimes it's not the answer that's the most important thing. It's the question you ask yourself. So some questions you can ask yourself for parts of life or for money decisions is, will I regret not doing this more than doing it? what would my older self probably say about this? Am I making this decision from fear or from alignment with what I am or who I am? Is this helping me build a life I actually want? And if this works out financially, but it costs me peace, time, or meaning, is it still worth it? I think sometimes clarity comes from asking better questions, not from running a better Monte Carlo simulation. Good financial decisions aren't always the most efficient. They're the most sustainable emotionally and personally to you, the individual who has to make them.
Hmm. A lot of great questions in there. How do we start to develop the skill of asking better questions?
By asking yourself questions.
God damn you,
I
Chris.
I think
Okay.
and this is it. Again, philosophical.
Yeah.
The only thing that I know is that I exist. I don't even know if I exist in this body, in this form, but I know that my consciousness is somewhere. I could be a brain in a vat somewhere, living, being forced to relive this life, but I know that I exist in some form. I don't even know in truth that you exist. And to our listener, they don't even know in truth that I exist. This could all be a simulation that my brain has created. But I have to go ahead and put into impart to everybody else that they also exist because they are just like me. So every listener that's listening to this, the only thing you know is that you exist. That's it. But too many people go through life certain of things, certain that I know what the right answer is, or there is a correct answer for these things. And then there are these indemnable truths that I already know that I have access to. But again, the only thing you know for certain is that you exist. So the ability to be able to question is the strongest ability you can have, because if you know, like, if only I only know this one thing, that I exist, then that means that I don't know anything else. I don't know for certain. I always leave room for a little bit of doubt to be able to question, because too many people will go through life, and we've already had the podcast on different forms of truth, right? So if you don't know that podcast, go back and listen to it. I thought it was a really good podcast where people can, like, understand these different levels of what truth means, because there's not only one truth, or there is only one truth, but we don't have access to it. So you need to stay curious. You need to start growing. The most dangerous person in the world is someone who is certain. Again, the only thing you can truly be certain about, if you really dive down the rabbit hole, is that you exist. You as an individual who is listening to this, who is a conscious entity.
Hmm.
So maybe you're, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's some very deep stuff. And I wish all of us could be certain, but certainty is not something that us humans are very good at.
Yeah. And I mean, how many times, look at every atrocity in all of human history was based off of somebody that was certain that this was the right choice. Hitler, Mao, Stalin, certainty. So maybe at this point you might be thinking, like, what does all of this have to do with financial independence, Chris? Like, I thought you guys are the five guys, and now I'm confused. We're talking about death and sadness and God and all these other crazy things. But I think this all connects directly to financial independence. Financial independence is not just about retiring early. In fact, I would say it's not about retiring early at all. It's about being able to take control. Because I think too many people, they think that financial independence is just about hitting a certain number. But in truth, it's about gaining options. It's about reducing the number of decisions that you're making out of fear. It's about having the ability to choose a path that feels right for you and more aligned. Because financial independence is the ability to choose the life that you are least likely to regret. Because too many people are living these lives of quiet desperation because money is the thing that stops them from living the life that they want. that they live a life of quiet desperation, regretting having to live this life in order to survive with money. And this is a much deeper definition than just not working anymore. Am I living in alignment with myself and what's going to minimize my regrets? Or can you hear my dogs?
I can hear the dog. Yeah, I love it. People love dogs. I love it. Let's keep it going.
Uh, or are you saying, or is financial independence to you like it's just not working anymore? Like I just don't want to work anymore. We need to be able to elevate this of what financial independence is. Like the fire movement, I think is dead, or I would like that to be dead. Like it should just be the fire movement. Like how can we just financial independence and like live your life?
And what you're saying is not necessarily like, live your life once you reach financial independence, but make sure to live your life every day in alignment with your goals and who you are as a person, with the overarching goal to get to financial independence, essentially.
Yeah, and this is always going to be hard, right? So I'll just give you like a practical tool that I try to give myself when I'm
Okay.
making these many decisions, and it's doing these two simultaneous things. It's first off, you need to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to die tomorrow. What decisions should I make with that knowledge today? And then do the opposite. All right, I'm going to live for another million years. What decisions should I do right now? What choice should I make right now? And then maybe you can write it down. Maybe you just think about it. What choices or what things would you do in both of those scenarios? And then from there, you might be able to find a better choice to make right now. Because if you're willing to do something right now that you would do only if you're only going to live for a day, that might not be the right decision if you were going to live forever. But if there's things that you were going to do regardless, for example, fashion changes all the time, right? There could be a chance that I could decide, hey, I really want this, like these new pair of pants or these new pair of shoes because they're all the rage. And I'm going to go out, I'm going to buy this thing in order to feel happy right now. But in a year or 2 years, there people are going to look at that and say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. But at the end of the day, I know when I'm 90 years old, I'm not going to regret going to dinner with my wife. I'm not going to regret having a home that I'm proud of. I'm not going to regret the memories that I made. And I think in truth, like that's the biggest thing is like so many people they put so much emphasis on the stuff, on the things, rather than what the things actually gave you. The things actually gave you were the ability to make more memories, to have this ability to time travel and remember these nostalgic moments. Because to bring it back to the beginning, when I think back, and last night my friends were all texting with one another, our little group, and we were sending photos of our friend and sending like these videos of our friend that passed away. And those memories are some of the best memories that I have to this day and are always going to stay with me unless I get Alzheimer's or something like that. But they're going to stay with me. And they didn't cost anything to make. I think a lot of people, they think, oh, okay, I won't buy stuff, Chris. Like, maybe I can understand that stuff doesn't bring me happiness. Experiences bring me happiness. So I must spend a bunch of money on experiences. Like, if I'm going to travel, I guess we have to do 5 stars because experiences, right? Because memories. But in truth, look at the memories you have from elementary school, from middle school, from high school, from maybe college. Did you have a lot of money then? No, or maybe not. But those might be some of the best memories you have. I think that's why people in general, if you watch like happiness charts, there's like as your kid super happy, then, teenager goes down and then it kind of goes up and then it goes back down. And then like towards the end of life, there's like a sharp increase in happiness as people begin to approach the end of their lives because you realize what's most important and you have the ability in your brain to time travel to different times in history and remember the best moments.
I've been thinking about this maybe like the last 5 months or so. I noticed that I was spending a lot more time in my memories than I had ever had. The good memories, not the bad memories. And I wondered if that was healthy. Like, is it is it okay to, reminisce about the good times when you're in the bad times? And I think it is, but it also reminded me, it's like, wow, I haven't had those memorable moments for a while. It's just a little bit too much of the same. It's like, oh, it's like almost my brain reminding me that's like, hey, go out and do stuff. Otherwise, you're gonna have regrets. Um, because you're so just like tunnel vision on this that you're missing everything else. And not in like a, you know, FOMO type of way. That's not really my kind of vibe. But, I think it isn't I don't think I know it's important to go out and make memories, but memories aren't just traveling and, going experiencing the world, but it's also it's like the memory dividends of, hey, I learned how to make a cake. I learned how to build this cool structure. I learned how to code. I These are things that to me excite me. Maybe not so much coding, but um, I don't think regret is simply a financial thing, and I don't think finances should ever hold you back from making good memories. Because whether you have $10 or $10 million, memories can be made. It's just about how you make those memories and the right mindset and the right mind frame that you kind of frame things in. But I'm getting off topic a little bit. I want to turn it back to you. It just got me thinking for a bit. Like, maybe that's maybe that's why I've been thinking about more happy memories recently.
Yeah,
A lot of
maybe.
death and a lot
And
of
like the only
sadness.
way that we can access those happy memories, experience those happy memories is by being present right now. Because the amount of time that you're focusing on just, I want to focus on the happy memories of the past or the bad memories of the past, like you're not really making new memories now. And then the more you're focused on like the future of like, oh, I want to make sure the future me is happy, you're not focusing on right now. And you're kind of letting your life pass you by living in the future or living in the past. So I want to talk about independence and purpose. If we minimize, or if minimizing regret is the goal of this podcast, right? The question might be, so what does that actually create? What does minimizing regret actually create? And I think it creates independence, because every time you make a decision in alignment with your values instead out of fear, you become a little more free. And I think this is the part where financial independence really comes in, is that too many people, they think financial independence is a binary. It's either I'm financially independent or I am not. But in truth, it's a continuum. Every dollar that you choose to save is a dollar closer to financial freedom. Every dollar that you choose not to spend on a pair of shoes or a purse or a car is money that is spent in buying independence. So I think a lot of people, when they get a $500 check and they say, all right, I have to spend this much money on whatever. I have $100 left. Do I go and buy $100 worth of thing? Or do I save that $100 and sacrifice for myself? But in truth, that $100, if spent on a thing, an item, or if spent on your independence, is still a choice and it was still spent. But when you choose for your independence, you choose more optionality. When you have more optionality, you have the ability to minimize regret. Independence is not just financial. It has to do with far more things, like owning your time, choosing your path, being able to say no to bad decisions, not being trapped by expectations of others, and not living on somebody else's scripts. Too many people think that money is the goal, but money was never the ultimate goal. Independence, it was the goal. Freedom was the goal. Money is just one of the many tools you can use that helps you get there. And that's something that we've talked about all the time. Like that's even the purpose of my company, Mons on Wealth, is to get money out of the way so you can focus on what matters most in life. Before we move on to purpose, what are you thinking, Dom?
No, it's just a lot to unpack, a lot to really think about. And it's just, I feel like the last couple episodes have been ones where, I'm going to have to listen to them again and really sit with them and meditate on them and see what they mean to me and how I can use this in my own life so that I can make the most aligned decisions, not necessarily just the most optimized, but a lot of great information here. And I hope the listeners are taking notes. And I hope if you are enjoying this to, give it a like or a 5 star if you're on any of the podcast platforms and to share the episode. We're trying to grow the episode and the podcast. But no, I mean, I think we're hitting a great stride here. Let's keep it going.
Yeah. So, like I said, I want to talk about independence and purpose. So, I think a lot of people, as they're on that path towards independence, because there's levels to it, right? And it's again, it's not binary. It's not independent, independent. It's a continuum. Every point is everything that you choose to save or spend on your independence gets you closer to it. But as someone starts to get closer to that independence, the next question becomes, okay, now what? Like, what do I do now that I have the independence or I'm getting closer to the independence? I'm no longer subservient to other people. And that's where purpose comes in. And the purpose is what you care about, who you want to help, what you want your life to be about, and what makes freedom meaningful to you. And the eliminate or the minimization of future regrets is the alignment of all of these things. Because if you were able to get all of those things correct, you would be able to eliminate regret. But that's impossible because you don't have all the information to be able to do it. But too many people, what I find is they never talk about purpose. They're like, I'll figure out the purpose part when I get everything else right. But if the purpose is where you're trying to go, that's the goal. That's the ultimate place, right? The purpose and the independence are the place you're trying to go to. But you say, I'm not going to worry about the purpose until I get there. Then how will you ever know that you arrive? Like the Cheshire Cat said, if you don't know where you're going, any direction will get you there. But in life, we're trying to get somewhere. Each one of us is trying to get somewhere. And there's not a right answer for where that somewhere is. So you need to work on these things in tandem. Don't wait till I have financial independence to start figuring out my purpose. Both of these things are made every single day. And again, there's not a right answer to it. Can't ask ChatGPT, can't ask your mom, you can't ask your best friend. You can only ask you. Purpose is what fills the space that independence creates. And independence is created every single day by every choice that you choose to make or taken away by every choice you make. Without purpose, independence and freedom will feel empty. And without independence, purpose feels out of reach. So they work together and they're annoying. And that's how money leads to independence. Independence leads to increasing your purpose. And at the end of the day, we still need to remember that money is just a tool. Money is the primary tool. Independence is the freedom, but purpose is the meaning.
That's beautiful. That is, we'll have to clip that one. We'll have to clip that one and go back on that. That was great. I'll add a little marker there. Um, so where can we go to kind of really start to where should we get started today? Because I know we've had a lot of great information, and I love the last segment about purpose and how, it fills the cracks of independence and they both work in tandem. But I'm kind of curious, what would be like a day one start? I'm new to this. I'm the listener, right? What can we where should I start, Chris?
Yeah. And this is why clarity matters so much.
Mhm.
A lot of people chase money without ever getting clear on what that money will be used for. And then one day people wake up with success on paper and no real connections in the life that they built or no real connection to the life that they had built. And that's why we constantly talk about getting money out of the way so you can focus on what matters most. So if there is somebody who's day one, we'll just get into the action steps, right? I would encourage our audience to ask themselves 3 questions. Because again, there's not an answer, Dominic. Like I can't give you the answer,
Yeah.
but I'll give you the ability to ask better questions to yourself. And that might start with, what would a regret minimized life look like for me? What kind of independence would help me live that life? And then what would I use that freedom for? Again, the goal is not to eliminate regrets. You can't. You don't have perfect knowledge. It's just to minimize them. So to be able to live in both of those things, to be the guppy and live for YOLO, I'm going to die anyway, so let's go for it, and be the Icelandic shark of, I want to have that compound interest. I want to have those things. I want to be able to take care of myself and invest in my body and my health. It's like the idea of cigarettes and cocaine. Cocaine is like the guppy. It's fast acting, and cigarettes are slower acting, but they're both bad for you. So what can I do regardless to like eliminate those things? I don't think most people, ideally, if you don't have this as like an issue, if I told you, hey, you have 10 hours to live, no one's going to be, all right, cool, I'm doing heroin then. Like most people are going to go and like make other decisions. So you need to be able to live those two things simultaneously. The main point of this whole podcast is that don't just chase more money for more money. Build towards a life that feels meaningful, aligned, and worth living. And the way we do that is through attempting to minimize our future regrets. Because at the end of the day, money is just a tool, but the real goal is far bigger than money. It is independence, it's purpose. And ultimately, it's about building a life that you do not regret.
Building a life worth living. I love it. That's beautiful. That's awesome. I'm that's what I needed. That's perfect. That's the perfect action step for this week. And a lot of questions to answer, a lot of stuff to write down. Um, yeah, maybe we should start having like a gonna have AI work up like, hey, we need like a worksheet for this episode. People can like fill it out down below. Um, we always manage to get to those philosophical debates. I love it. The more and more I think about it, the more I think we should change the FI to the PH, the Phi guys. I love it.
Yeah.
Um,
But you don't have to think about death as much as I do.
yeah,
Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's sad, but if you use that as your great teacher, it is a data point that you can use to be helpful. And building a life where you try to reduce regret is the life that you can look back on when you know that my time is up happily. That you can look back on the time and be like, yeah, I did it and I'm ready to go. Dominic, would you mind closing us out?
absolutely. You know, I just a final point on what you just said there. I think that's the beautiful. That's the just the most glorious way to end it all. It's like, man, I did it my way. You know, that Frank Sinatra song, My Way. It's a perfect song, but to get to the end, and obviously nobody lives without regret and nobody should live without regret. But I mean, to live it on your own terms, live life on your own terms is that's my goal right there. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know I did. If you did, please make sure to give us a like or a 5-star if you're listening on Spotify. If you didn't know, we are on all podcast platforms, not just here on YouTube, on Spotify, but we're also on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Caster, crazy stuff, right? Whoever heard of it? But I hope you guys did enjoy this and you meditate on this when you finish this episode. Don't go on to the next episode. Just sit with it for a bit. Sit with it for a bit, meditate on it, think about it, and really, if you have to, which I recommend, rerunning it and listening to it once again. But with that being said, I'm Dom, he's Chris, we're the Fi Guys, and we will see you in the next episode.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.